I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast. The NFL is meeting, so there are some new proposals on the table for rule changes that were proposed by teams. The Browns proposed being able to trade draft picks 5 years out. That feels like the team that's perpetually in rebuild in your dynasty league. That also is like F them picks and has no players. The Jets proposed an extra second round pick for bad teams. Talk about, in your best self-interest. And the Steelers pitched limiting free agent discussions. I believe it's supposed to be during the tampering period to no more than 5 players, which feels a little bit like a sour grapes move. I don't like really any of these proposals. Do you think any of them are going to pass?
So I'm with you when it comes to not liking them. The trading picks further out and adding picks for bad teams. I mean, who has not had those conversations in a dynasty league? It's,
But the other thing, much like in the dynasty league, the jabroni who trades the picks 5 years away won't be there in 5 years.
Correct.
Either GM or coach based on record wise to.
That's why you have to add the extra second round picks.
Yeah, you almost have to do both of them, I guess. But the rewarding teams for being perpetually futile.
The way the draft is set up, and the NFL has tanking. Like the NBA's got anti-tanking rules where that's what the draft lottery is. The NFL doesn't. You can be bad and get the first pick of the draft and the first pick of the second round, and it doesn't. The draft, it's deeper than a dynasty league where, like this year, we've got 4 real players, 5 maybe we feel real comfortable about in the draft. After that, it's like at the 106, you're like drafting somebody and just hoping they pan out. In the NFL, well, to be fair, they're not necessarily any better at evaluating talent than any of us dynasty managers are. They get paid lots of money and they face plant and miss all the time. I don't know. I just don't think going 5 years out seems like a bad deal. You already get comp picks when you lose free agents. There's teams
and coaches. I think you can even do it if you lose a coach.
Yeah. And even in like Major League Baseball, they have teams like the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Kansas City Royals, who are real low budget market teams, and they don't have a salary cap with a floor that makes them have to spend money. And so you see an extreme, sometimes a really wide gap between the lowest payroll and the highest payroll. I think the NFL, the way it's set up with having a floor, addresses some of that. Having a hard cap, there's NBA has a luxury tax. I think baseball has a luxury tax of sorts. I don't know that any one pro sports league gets it all exactly right. I don't think you need to be trading, 5 years out. If you develop a young player, your team is bad. You develop a young player, you lose them in free agency, you get comp picks. Why you don't just say, well, this team hasn't won, more than 2 games in the last 3 years, because in the NFL, you can do that on purpose. I think easier than just about any other league. So awarding them extra picks because of that doesn't make a ton of sense to me.
Yeah, and we'll see. Like I said, I find it hard to believe. Don't they have to have like a 2/3 majority? That's find it hard to believe any of those.
As far as limiting free agent discussions, I think you do away with the tampering period. It's either free agency or it's not free agency.
Supposedly it's
like
only
being pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not pregnant. There is no tampering.
I mean, that is essentially, they always say free agency period begins that Monday, but how many teams can actually manage negotiating with more than 5 players anyway? So, I mean, that feels like I was trying to figure out who they're targeting with this, because I didn't see any one team go out there. I mean, I guess the Raiders signed a lot of players, but I don't know.
Essentially, it comes down to who has the cap space. The more cap space you have, the more active you are in free agency. I mean, you can talk a good game all you want, Jerry Jones, but if you don't have any cap space, you're not going to sign free agents. You're going to wait till the second or third wave.
Well, and it was interesting to me. Affordable. It was interesting to me that Pittsburgh's the one that proposed this, because they don't seem like they typically go out and chase free agents anyway.
Yeah, they're going through some shit. They're on their 4th coach ever. And so I don't know that, when the owners, second generation of owners, are getting old, and I think they're getting ready to go through some changes in, trying to keep up with all the newfangled stuff. And it feels like McCarthy is going to be their first head coach that doesn't last 10 years.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see. It's definitely strange. I was trying to see who I was trying to remember. 2010 is when he won the Super Bowl. Did they win that? So Pittsburgh is pinning its hopes on the head coach and quarterback tandem that beat them in the 2010 Super Bowl.
And it was only 16 years ago.
Yeah, well, it takes a while for Pittsburgh to get things done. The other biggest piece of news was the big trade of the week. The Miami Dolphins traded Jalen Waddle to the Denver Broncos for a first, a third, and a swap of 4th-round picks. First, let's talk about the Dolphins, who gave a nice contract last week to Malik Willis. They have since given indications that they will not consider trading Devon Achane. But currently, their wide receiver room is Malik Washington, Jalen Tolbert, and Tutu Atwell, who I believe are all on 1-year or final year of deals. They also brought in Greg Dulcich back on a 1-year deal, but Waller is gone, Tyreek Hill is gone, Waddle is gone, Nick Westbrook-Ikini is gone. If you're Malik Willis, how are you feeling about this?
What can you feel? You got paid. You had to think they fired their coach. They're in some stage of rebuild. Would you prefer to have Jalen Waddle? Sure. But you brought in some additional draft capital to, maybe Jeff Hafley and who's their OC, Bobby Slowick. Maybe they looked at Jalen Waddle and Malik Willis and said, both good players, maybe not necessarily the right fit for each other. So we're going to go get some different types of talent for Malik Willis. I don't know that I buy Devon Achane not being available. I just think they looked at what they got for Waddle, and they're like, yeah, he's not available, but wink, wink. Make a Godfather offer.
Kind of depends on if it wouldn't be a total shock if the Jeff Hafley administration wants to be run heavy, in which case you probably would keep a hold of Achane, who also could be their wide receiver one, as far as the way things are going. They do have a lot of draft picks. Maybe they're going to go try to snag young playmakers. Hafley obviously was in Green Bay, a team that for the last 2 or 3 years has been using first, second, third, and fourth round picks to grab young wide receivers and tight ends, and they ended up kind of building and coalescing into a group around Jordan Love that worked. For a couple of years there, we were like, this is the youngest group. There's no proven guys. Tucker Kraft, a fourth round pick, is probably one of the best tight ends in the league. Jaden Reed has his moments when he's healthy. Christian Watson has his moments when he's healthy. So, maybe it's possible that that's, what they're going for. It seemed curious to me. The Dolphins were never going to be great this year, and they're probably not really playing for this year because they have a record amount of dead cap now, 175 million. And it was always going to take a little while to get out from under that. But definitely curious. On the other side,
Tankathon in their mock draft, which I think goes into the 4th round, they have them taking Carnell Tate in the 1st round. So that feels like, well, we're going to rebuild. But unlike the Green Bay drafts where they took 3 or 4 wide receivers one year, they also have them taking Bryce Lance with pick 130 and Michael Trigg, the tight end out of Baylor, with pick 90. But you're going to need to build that offensive lineup. But those would be 3 weapons, 1 that should be a plug and play, and 2 that should be developmental guys.
I mean, the other thing is their defense is incredible. And Jeff Hafley being a defensive guy, or if you were starting a true rebuild, we've talked about this before, most of the teams that have been successful on that have focused on building the trench positions first.
Right. Well, they have them taking Emmanuel McNeil Warren with the 2nd first, then R. Mason Thomas, edge rusher, Malik Muhammad, cornerback, and Julian Neal, cornerback. So, they take Carnell Tate with the 1st pick, then they take 4 straight defenders before they go back to offense with Michael Trigg. They're not really built. They only take 1 lineman, and he's an edge rusher.
And so far, I did not realize they have signed an S-ton of people. So Willis, we knew about. Greg Dulcich, a tight end. They brought in kicker Zane Gonzalez. They brought in Lonnie Johnson from the Raiders at safety. They brought back Willie Gay Jr. at linebacker. They brought in Daryl Baker Jr. at corner. They brought in Charlie Heck at right tackle. Joshua Uche as an edge rusher from the Eagles. They brought in Zane Anderson, who was a safety with Hafley in Green Bay. They brought in Jameer Salyer, who was a guard for the Chargers. Jalen Tolbert. They brought in David Ajobo, who is an edge rusher from the Baltimore Ravens. Atwell, they brought in a tight end, Ben Sims. They brought in Marco Wilson, a corner, Alex Austin, a corner, AJ Green came back, who was a corner, and they brought in another edge rusher from San Francisco and Robert Beal Jr., and they brought in a new punter. So it does look like they've been collecting secondary and line pieces. So maybe they're trying, and if you're going and poaching, maybe reserves or guys who are part of a rotation from the Ravens, the Eagles, the Packers, and the 49ers, that's not a bad strategy because those teams had very good defenses with very good defensive coordinators. So that might be part of the youth movement too. It does not look like they've, outside of Tutu Atwell and Jalen Tolbert and Greg Dulcich, they haven't really addressed offensive positions. So maybe that does give you the impression that they would go offense heavy. And I think that 1 year in Green Bay, I'm pretty sure they had 2 second-round picks. They had a second round that was Christian Watson, a third round was Luke Musgrave, and then they used fourth-round picks on Romeo Dobbs and Tucker Kraft. And that was kind of how they did it. And they got an extra third. They swapped fourth round. They got an extra first from Denver. I think they were one of the teams that got compensatory picks too.
Yeah, they've got some draft capital, and they've signed 16 free agents. So they're trying to build Frankenstein's monster down there on South Beach.
Okay, so I just looked. 2 first-round picks, a second-round pick, 4 third-round picks, and a fourth-round pick. So then they have a fifth and 2 sevenths, but that's pretty good. That's a place where if you were looking to do cheap now, they have to hope their GM and or Troy Aikman, who's supposedly helping their GM, are able to hit on those. But if you do hit on those, that's that could be a good way to get back quickly.
Yeah, who's their GM?
Didn't Aikman hire the GM? Help hire
John Eric Sullivan.
There you go.
Yeah, I forget where. I don't recall off the top of my head where he's from, but
you could also package a couple of third-round picks and move back up into the late seconds. They have 311, 323, 326, 330. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, not too bad.
They can move around, yeah.
For the Denver Broncos, Waddle adds to the receiving group, figures to start alongside Cortland Sutton. They also have Troy Franklin, Pat Bryant, and Marvin Mims, and they re-signed Little Jordan Humphrey. So that is a pretty solid group now for Bo Nix. They also have Evan Ingram if he ever does anything. I think there's been a lot of questions about what happens to the younger Denver receivers. You and I have talked before. I think Marvin Mims is primarily a special teams guy. That's where he was trending anyway. I'm actually of the opinion that this trade hurts Troy Franklin the most, and that was also echoed by a lot of the Broncos beat reporters because he was the guy vying to be that kind of wide receiver too. Pat Bryant is bigger and has a different skill set and was deployed in a different way, and so I think Pat Bryant's role remains largely unchanged. I think Franklin had a better second year. This probably kills any enthusiasm you had that he would be a starter for you.
So who's the better slot player, Franklin or Bryant?
I think it's quite possible they would put Waddle or Sutton in the slot, actually.
Because they our lads list Troy Franklin with Bryant as his backup in the slot. I was going to ask you, take whoever you...
That is the complete opposite of what the actual reporters on the ground in Denver and having watched them believe is going to happen. Bryant is bigger, did much better on contested balls, and is a much better and aggressive run blocker. And that's why you saw frequently down the stretch when Bryant was hurt and not available, they were taking Franklin out and putting in Little Jordan Humphrey because Humphrey is a bigger body and a better blocker, and they can't get what they need out of Troy Franklin.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree with you. I was just, when I saw this depth chart showing Waddle as one of the outside wide receivers, to me that felt odd. It felt like, because I felt like he's probably a better fit in the slot than as an outside receiver.
Well, they haven't even had camp or anything. It's really hard to make accurate depth charts based on guesses, especially when you're adding players and tweaking players. Denver, an underrated piece of this is they have a new offensive coordinator and a new play caller, and how that changes what they have done remains a little unclear to me as well.
How long you think it'll take for Peyton to take the play calling back?
Peyton never said he wouldn't call any plays. He said predominantly Davis Webb would call plays. But as soon as we see, I don't know if you saw my great post trade is I can't wait to see Bo Nix connect with Jalen Waddle 5 yards behind the line of
Right.
scrimmage for a gain of 1 yard, 10 on 3rd and 10, 6 times a game. That's when
Right.
you'll know Sean Payton has called plays again. I don't think it's a terrible trade. I thought Denver gave up quite a bit. People were posting Jalen Waddle's stats during the same time period as Michael Pittman Jr., who got traded for a 6th round pick. I mean, a 1st and a 3rd to move up in the 4th feels like a lot. That was what they offered, what the Patriots offered for AJ Brown. So, the Eagles are the winners here. I don't think it's a bad addition, but I don't know that it solves any of Denver's problems. It's curious. We went into the offseason with a lot of people focused on Denver needed to make big strides at running back and tight end, and the big strides they made were to sign the exact same players they had last year, all back into position. Every single one of our tight ends, except for Mercedes Lewis, who I assume is retiring, and every single one of our running backs, they just signed right back, which gives me pause. And at linebacker, they signed back 2 guys and released Dre Greenlaw, who was the big signing that we made last year because we needed a linebacker. And so we lost depth along, one of our best reserve safeties, PJ Locke, went to go be a starter somewhere else. John Franklin Meyer, who was a huge rotational piece on the defensive line, went somewhere else. And so you have to hope you can hit some home runs. I'm also, as a fan, I'm just going to say this, I've been perpetually pissed off the last 2 years because Von Miller has said repeatedly to everyone that he wants to come back and play for Denver and he will take whatever contract they offer. And the dumb fucks in the front office can't seem to get that done. So,
well, you don't get deals done that you don't want to do.
Yeah, well, I actually think George Payton is a bottom 3rd general manager in the league, and all of his moves have borne that out. It's not like vintage Rams where they traded all their 1st-round picks and have Super Bowl and NFC Championship appearances to show for it. I have great fears that Denver ends up being a 9-8 or 10-7 3rd place in the West, either just in or 7th seed AFC, because everything seemingly broke right in terms of the Chargers having a catastrophic set of injuries and the Chiefs having catastrophically bad luck and a bad set of injuries. And I think the AFC West
being catastrophic.
I'm pretty sure the AFC West plays the AFC South and the NFC West this year. And, that's a little bit of a different horse of a different color than catching a Commanders team that had been decimated by injuries and age, or catching the Giants on the way down, or catching the enigmatic Cowboys and Eagles, which is the NFC teams. You're not going to probably catch the Rams or the Seahawks or the 49ers sleeping. Maybe the Cardinals, who knows? But the AFC South too has blossomed. I have to double check. I don't know, not incredibly impressed. But hey, Denver finally got an outside free agent or addition because they were the only team in the NFL who had not signed or brought in any player who was not on their roster the previous season. So congratulations, guys.
You got that going for you.
Let's talk some other additions. I'm going to give you the quarterback moves that happened. You can tell me if any of them spark anything for you. The Chiefs traded a 27 6th-round pick to the Jets for Justin Fields. Supposedly, the Packers made a better offer, but Justin Fields said he would not go there. I found that amusing. The Panthers traded Andy Dalton to the Eagles for a 27 7th-round pick. Kenny Pickett, now the backup in Carolina, made Andy Dalton expendable. Trey Lance back to the Chargers on a 1-year deal. Josh Johnson signs with the Bengals to be their backup on a 1-year deal. Carson Wentz had a better deal offer from the Jets to be a backup there, but chose to go to the Vikings, where now has to make you think perhaps J.J. McCarthy is 3rd string because they brought in Murray. They brought back Wentz. Certainly seemed like Wentz was the player KOC preferred when he and McCarthy were both healthy. I thought that was interesting. But the one that probably is most interesting to me is Justin Fields, because I am not convinced Patrick Mahomes is ready week 1. And it's possible we see a couple bridge games from Fields. And you and I have thought there's potential there if there was someone to develop him. I don't know if he ever got that in Chicago. And we're pretty confident he didn't get that from New York last year. But Eric Bieniemy and Andy Reid, if he is salvageable, that feels like the place.
It certainly does. Now, would I feel the same way if Matt Nagy was still there? Probably not. But, I love it for Fields. And honestly, I hope Mahomes makes it back sooner rather than later. I think it would be in Justin Fields' best interest to not play a single snap this year, to then sign again next year and just get developed, go be somewhere where you can put work in with no pressure. And the Chiefs are as much a no pressure situation as you're going to find, because nobody in their right mind looks at the trade for Fields and goes, oh, he's there to push Mahomes. They're like, no, he's there to hold a clipboard. And if he has to play, they're going to have a specialized plan for him. The Chiefs have some other issues they have to deal with in regards to Rashee Rice, and Hollywood Brown is gone. So that leaves basically Xavier Worthy and Travis Kelce atop the receiving charts. And while Kelce is fading, he is not what he once was. Bringing in Kenneth Walker, I think, is a boost for the running game, but they don't really have any depth behind Walker right now. They've still got to figure that out. So I love it for Fields as an Ohio State fan and somebody who kind of feels like maybe he didn't get the best developmental process. And part of that was nowadays it's rare that you draft a quarterback as early as he went and they get to develop. They have to play him now. That really wasn't in his best interest. They changed coaches, went to New York, which was a bad situation. If Fields plays the first couple weeks, I think we're going to see a lot of Kenneth Walker. We're going to see a lot of half-field reads where he doesn't have to overthink things. And Andy Reid's not going to be afraid to say, dude, you're 6'2" and 230 pounds, and you run a 4.4. Let's just run it. Let's,
and he has Walker back there now too, which will be nice. Kelce is a proven security blanket kind of receiver to make things happen. You never know. The question about Rice isn't whether he's going to succeed on the field; it's whether he's going to be available to be on the field.
Yeah.
So I think they'll put. It's definitely a better supporting cast and a better infrastructure than he's had before. I think they do have some line questions that hopefully they'll work on answering. Do any of the other ones kind of jump out at you?
Well, they've already came out and said that Tanner McKee's the number 2. I think that Andy Dalton he's a stable veteran presence, doesn't have the skill set similar to Jalen Hurts, maybe more similar to Tanner McKee. But it feels like with Carson Wentz and Dalton feel like the guy, if something happens to your quarterback in the second quarter, that's the guy you want to stick in there because they've seen it all, versus the young guy that you want to get a full week of practice before you throw him in there. So does that mean that McKee's going into his third year now? So, JJ McCarthy's going into his third year. Are they going to keep 3 quarterbacks active? Probably not. So Wentz and Dalton do feel a little bit redundant But if something happens to your starter, having a veteran in case the young guy falters, or a veteran because you don't trust the young guy, is a prudent move.
I think this is McKee's fourth year because he was drafted in 2023. He was traded by the Saints. I think he just traded by the Saints. Maybe it was on another. Oh, May 4th. Yeah. Signed Tanner McKee in May 4th, 2023. So this is his going into his fourth year, but he must have never been active, or was probably a practice squad guy his first year because he only shows stats the last 2 years.
Yeah.
We'll see what they're doing,
I like the fit for Lance. I think he's got a similar skill set to Justin Herbert. Not as good, definitely, but he's a big guy who's mobile, has a big arm. If he can continue to develop his accuracy, then he could be 2027's Malik Willis.
The running backs that have been added, the Commanders added Jerome Ford and Jeremy McNichols on 1-year deals. The Broncos brought back Jaleel McLaughlin on a 1-year deal. The Titans signed A.J. Dillon on a 1-year deal, and the Saints added Ty Chandler on a 1-year deal. I guess the only thing that stands out to me is I don't know what the Commanders are doing. They have brought in these two guys. They have Krosky Merritt, and they brought in Rachaad White on a 1-year deal. And if I'm Jaden Daniels, I'm looking at all this, unless the reports are true that they're going to draft Jeremiah Love, it feels like they Frankenmonstered their backfield again.
Yeah, it's tough to see. Jerome Ford is a solid backup. Rachaad White is a good receiving back, but he doesn't have great vision. He struggles with running the ball inside. Maybe Bill reaches some of the fruition that was projected for him last year. He kind of face planted. Jeremy McNichols, he's out there giving it the old college try. He's in his 8th year now or something, out of BYU or Utah or something.
I know it feels like the better one for them to have brought back of their kind of Frankenmonster guys last year would have been Chris Rodriguez, who actually looked pretty good and worked himself.
Yeah. He lost a little bit of weight, looked a little bit shifty.
Yeah.
Now he's down there going to compete with Bashal Tutin.
I think they said, though, McNichol is a good special teams player, so that might factor into some of it. If I'm Jaden Daniels and they're like, hey, we know we got to do better for you this offseason. 1-year deals for Jerome Ford and Rachaad White, and bringing in Chig Okonkwo while letting Deebo Samuel walk is not exactly what at this point in time I would say is a great improvement.
Well, they did bring back the De'Ami Brown, and hey, Treylon Burks had a little bit of a breakout.
Yeah. Wide receivers, Darnell Mooney signed a 1-year, $10 million deal with the Giants. Christian Kirk went to the 49ers on a 1-year deal. Marquise Brown signed with the Eagles on a 1-year deal. Van Jefferson and De'Ami Brown went to the Commanders on 1-year deals. The Browns signed Tylan Wallace. Your Lions signed Greg Dortch, and the Colts added Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. I think the couple that I was most interested in was Darnell Mooney to the Giants. They obviously lost Wan'Dale Robinson. We've seen him be a pretty solid complementary number 2 against an alpha number 1 with a good tight end. That's what he did in Atlanta. They signed Likely. They have Malik Neighbors. I think Darnell Mooney would be a better number 2 to me than perpetual giant Darius Slayton. And I was interested by the Marquise Brown one, because it really rumors have bubbled up again that there is a trade in place for A.J. Brown to go to the Patriots. So Marquise Brown would be a pretty awesome third receiver if A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith are there, but could be an okay number 2, I guess, opposite Devonta Smith.
Yeah, if if Brown goes, then you're looking at Darius Cooper, Johnny Wilson, Britton Covey, Danny Gray, Quez Watkins to slide up. And that's not an inviting group. I like Johnny Wilson. I think he has the potential to be a unique type of receiver. He's, 6'6", 6'7". Reminds me of Harold Carmichael, the former Eagle. But, are you going to then, are you just going to put him on the outside? I don't know. I think Darius Cooper and Britton Covey both strike me more as special teamers, wide receiver 5-6 types. So if they do trade Brown, who is it? The Eagles just signed another running back, Dameon Pierce. He's going to be a special teamer. So he's good kick returner. So you got Barkley, Tank Bigsby, Dallas Goedert's back. So, because they don't throw the ball a ton, narrowing the funnel there isn't.
Well, they didn't throw the ball a ton. That's a big question I have, because once again, changing schemes, and supposedly the other guy got the boot because he couldn't figure out the pass offense. You mentioned Goddard, who's in the tight end group. I was mildly surprised that they ended up bringing Goddard back because for going into last year, it seemed like they signed every tight end humanly possible because they wanted to, and they dangled him in trade. Going into this offseason, it seemed like for sure he was going somewhere else. It's like they don't know how to quit him. Maybe it's because they have too many A.J. Brown problems, or is this their new offensive coordinator wants to get the ball going down the field again?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Mannion does. Will he just end up as a scapegoat again? Like last guy was? I forget his name.
Kevin Patullo.
Yeah.
I mean, there were a lot of people that really disliked Kevin Patullo. Fans, pundits, everyone that lived in the greater Philadelphia area. So Sean Mannion can't do much worse than that.
To be fair, rumor has it people in the Philadelphia area aren't fond of most people.
That's true. We mentioned Goddard. He was probably the biggest tight end signing. The only other ones, Tyler Conklin, a 1-year deal to your Lions. Kylan Granson, a 1-year deal to the Titans. Mo Alley-Cox back to the Colts on a 1-year deal. Didn't feel like any of those really moved the needle for me. Any of them spark an interest for you?
Not in the least. I mean, probably the one I like the most is Mo Alley-Cox, but not because it's good for fantasy, just because it means we know they've got somebody that knows the system they can put in as a blocking tight end and let Tyler Warren go eat. Conklin, it's he's going to be second, third tight end, not going to be fantasy relevant behind Laporta.
Well, and my big hopes for Conklin came last year when he went to the Chargers, and it was Gadsden that broke out and kind of made Conklin irrelevant. He had a couple of years when the Jets were completely depleted, but I'm with you. I don't see that doesn't spark my interest the same way it moved me a few years ago.
Yeah.
Well, those are the free agents that have signed. I want to hit the five free agents that caught my eye that are remaining unsigned at each of the positions. We'll start at quarterback. So potentially, you could call them the best free agents left. That feels subjective, but Kirk Cousins still out there. Aaron Rodgers, probably more a matter of if he's going to play. Russell Wilson, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Cooper Rush. So Rush fascinates me because he was a kind of a high commodity after his backup work in Dallas, and he went to Baltimore and played himself out of a job. Essentially, I found that fascinating. Jimmy Garoppolo, there was a lot of talk that the new administration for the Cardinals was interested in him to take over as potentially their bridge starter, and they instead went with Gardner Minshew. And Kirk Cousins, he got rumored. Everybody thought once he got cut, he was going to land as a starter somewhere. And now they're talking about him being Jordan Love's backup in Green Bay or being the veteran bridge in Las Vegas. It feels like the only one of these guys that potentially will walk right into fantasy relevance is Aaron Rodgers, and it's just a matter of whether he wants to play again or not.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think if Rodgers doesn't play, then I think Cousins could slide right into that spot.
Agree.
And he may be waiting for that to fall. And then I don't know why Cousins wouldn't look at Arizona as an option either. I mean, they've got Brissett, and so
and Minshew.
Minshew's the backup to Brissett right now. You know,
Yeah.
While I would expect he'll play because I don't know that Brissett can get through a whole season.
I don't think any of us thought Brissett was actually going to be the starting answer but apparently it wasn't only Jonathan Gannon that liked Jacoby Brissett.
Apparently, maybe he's just a hell of a nice guy. I think Cooper Rush needs to go somewhere where there's a quarterback in front of him that plays a similar style. Going from backing up Dak Prescott, who didn't really run much, especially after he hurt his ankle, to backing up Lamar Jackson. And then when you do play, they have to change the offense. Like, he should have been trying to go to Detroit, backing up Jared Goff.
I thought the Cooper Rush.
You got another statue quarterback that doesn't have necessarily the biggest arm. I think we're at the point now, though, where Cooper Rush, he's 34 years old or something like that. He's just hoping to catch on as a QB3 somewhere.
Yeah, Cooper Rush is 32. I always thought him going to Baltimore was weird too, and they gave him a massive contract to be the backup. Baltimore obviously thought better of it. They went back to Tyler Huntley, who you and I thought he seemed like the perfect backup to Lamar because they're very similar in skill set. They forewent him to give a huge deal to Cooper Rush, and then had to go panic acquire somebody. That never made sense. So, it's almost the same as Dallas going with Joe Milton as their backup. That doesn't feel like he's got the same exact skill set as Dak. And then they went.
He was probably more similar to Dak when Dak was younger. Yeah. The first few years of Dak's career, he rushed for 6 touchdowns and 300 plus yards.
Right, now it seems like, if reports are to be believed, the only running he does is between ladies' houses.
Yeah. Get it.
Speaking of running backs, this is kind of feels to me like a list with one notable exception of guys that maybe should think about retirement. And so Joe Mixon's still out there, didn't play at all last year, has an incredibly nebulous foot ankle injury. I'm not sure he ever plays again, but people have said he's a big domino out there to sign. I don't know if that's true. Nick Chubb, a lot of knee injuries, a lot of mileage, probably, last year didn't look great. Najee Harris would be my exception. He's coming off of a terrible injury, but he's only in his 6th season, and he had been a regular fixture, rushing for 1,000 yards his first 4 years with the Steelers. So I think there might be still something less. Austin Eckler, I don't know if he's still considering coming back. And then Antonio Gibson, feels like he's come to more of a special teams role. I looked at this list. I wouldn't be shocked if none of them end up on a roster prior to the start of the season.
Yeah, I agree with you. Harris is probably the one on this list. I would probably have Brian Robinson at the top of the list.
Yeah, I forgot he was still available. That's a good note.
And so I don't know that anybody's ready to give him a shot to compete for a starting job, but I think if he comes in as an RB2 and maybe has a Chris Rodriguez type of come to Jesus talk with himself, slims down a little bit, gets a little more wiggly, maybe he can take over a job somewhere for somebody. But yeah, I think, we saw last year, I'm as big a Nick Chubb fan as anybody. Oh, there's my Chubb jersey behind Cole.
Yeah, it's not that I don't love Chubb or appreciate Chubb. he has.
There's no there. And
Not too
there's
many injuries.
concern with Najee is he's a big guy, wasn't known as burst, and he may very well had injury, not anything good.
Yeah. So let's migrate to wide receivers. A couple notable names: Tyreek Hill, now 32, coming off a pretty gruesome leg injury, plenty of off-field distractions. Was released by the Dolphins. Deebo Samuel, who last year was with the Commanders. Stephon Diggs, speaking of off-field distractions, was released by the New England Patriots. Keenan Allen last year had his reunion with the Chargers. The one that shocks me the most is Juwan Jennings, because he figured to be a pretty hot name, possibly even to go back to San Francisco. And they went and made the splashy Mike Evans signing. They added Christian Kirk. They still have Pearsall. It feels like he's not going to go there. A lot of rumors bubbling up that he could end up being wide receiver 1 for the Raiders, but I am nominally surprised of all the guys on that list that he is not signed. He's the one that I would expect to be the next big wide receiver domino to fall.
Yeah, I am 100% on board with that thought. I would want him over Deebo, but did they cut Brandon Ayuk yet, or is they still?
Brandon Ayuk has not been released. They said that there's no financial, I guess, need to. It's not like he has any money guaranteed early on. There's been bubbling rumors that he's going to get traded to the Commanders, but no moves have happened. Deebo, everybody was talking that he was probably odds-on favorite to be signed by the Broncos, but when they traded for Jalen Waddle, no chance that's happening now. So that kind of,
right.
If
I'm Jennings or Deebo, if I'm their agent, I'm getting on the phone with the Raiders because I know there's a need there. I don't know if I'm Juwan Jennings. Well, the thing is Miami's got so much dead cap, it's hard to go there and get your money's worth.
Yeah, but I mean, Miami would be an interesting fallback. If the Eagles really move A.J. Brown, I could see them getting one of these big guys to go into the mix with what they have. If they don't, New England, there's been bubbling rumors that New England was looking at maybe bringing back Diggs on a more cap-friendly deal. Maybe that's contingent on whether they get A.J. Brown or not. But there, when we've gone through, there are plenty of teams that don't have glistening receiving cores.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm Juwan Jennings, maybe Kansas City makes a ton of sense. You've got an aging Travis Kelce, questions around Rashee Rice.
Yeah, I was trying to think who else Kansas City has. Because I know they have Rice and Worthy. They obviously gave up Brown. Let's look at some of these wide receiver room depth charts right now. Buffalo solved it. Miami is probably the biggest glaring need. I would say New England still, charitably a work in progress.
Yeah. I mean, Kansas City's wide receiver Tyquan Thornton.
I mean, perhaps the Ravens, because right now they're projecting Devontae Walker to be a starter alongside Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman.
To quote Judy Tenuta, it could happen.
It could happen. Tennessee, because neither of us are really sold that Calvin Ridley is still there. I like Ayo Manor and Shamir Adike were interesting stories of need. The Raiders, though, Jalen Taylor, Trey Tucker, Jack Beck are currently slotted. So I forgot the Chiefs brought back Tyquan Thornton. So currently their 3 starters listed are Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, and Tyquan Thornton. And they did like Thornton, so you never know. It looks like the Giants got a little bit better. I mean, the Commanders are still, I think, need to do something.
Yeah.
Another sneaky place now, though, is actually the Atlanta Falcons because they're projecting to start Drake London, Jahan Dotson, and Olamide Zaccheaus. The New Orleans Saints are projected to start Mason Tipton, Devon Vele, and Chris Olave.
What could go wrong?
Obviously, we like Olave, but some questions beyond that. The West seems like it's pretty set in the NFC, but there are some options. John Jennings, I think, is the one that's going to go next. Tight ends, David Njoku, Jonnu Smith, Darren Waller, Taysom Hill, and Zach Ertz are out there. The one that's shocking to me is Njoku, and I really don't think it's a matter of teams not being interested. I think it's more a matter of when he decides where he wants to play, that'll get done. The other ones, Jonnu Smith went from a career year to, he supposedly went to the perfect system, and they traded a lot for Arthur Smith to get him back. 38 receptions, 222 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Not lighting the world on fire, got released there. Darren Waller came out of retirement, and most of the time you probably forgot he wasn't still retired. Taysom Hill feels like a player whose window has passed. And Ertz coming back, Ertz has said he's not sure he wants to retire, but that injury was graphic and brutal.
Yeah.
I would say, aside from Njoku, it's not a lock any of those guys get signed.
Yeah, well, I would expect Smith and Waller to get signed, but maybe they're not signed until in season. Probably Smith a little bit sooner.
Or Waller retires again.
Yeah. The hard thing with Waller is, of the list there, he's probably the one with the most athletic ability, but he's also probably the one, even with Zach Ertz coming off an injury, that I would expect to miss games because of injuries.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the Njoku too, part of it was he was a late cut as well. So
yeah, and he's met with quite a few teams. I fully expect him to sign. I think it's a matter of where he wants to go. It's interesting. The Ravens seem like the one that he is potentially tracking toward, and seeing him play opposite of Mark Andrews could be interesting. That would be a pretty good 2 tight end pairing.
You're not sold on Durham Smythe?
I'm not.
You know what's going to happen is it's going to be something that just is going to make absolutely no sense. He's going to sign with Detroit or Arizona, somewhere where they've got an established tight end, and it's going to be like, what the heck?
I mean, if he went to Las Vegas, since they really have no wide receivers, they could just play 3 tight end sets and put Ian Bowers on the outside and let Michael Mayer be the inline blocker.
They could. Not enough 13 personnel, Rand.
No. Well, that'll do it for us today. We will be back next week with the latest news. We're also going to look at the biggest risers and fallers at each position post free agency. Each of us will get to pick. I'll let you pick your list first, and so that I make sure I pick different ones. But we will look at guys that we think have helped themselves, or have hurt themselves, or were helped or hurt by who came and went from their teams. Should be a little bit interesting. But Dennis, if the people have some free time and it's sweltering outside, so they actually have to go out and do yard work now, what can they do?
Well, they can head on over to your favorite podcast platform, hit that search bar, type in the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast. Give us a like, give us a subscribe.
For all you climate deniers out there, it's supposed to be 90 degrees on Saturday, March 21st in Colorado Springs, Colorado, where our typical seasonal average is somewhere in the 50s. So
yeah, Matt, but it snowed Monday night here, so
it snowed Monday here too. But the we're all going to get pneumonia because I don't think it got out of the 20s on Sunday. And it was like 12 degrees Monday. I was laughing. And it was warmer when I left my house this morning to go to work, 57, than it was at any point on Monday. And by Saturday, it's supposed to be 91 degrees. I don't understand what's happening. You've been in the deep freeze, and we've been like beach weather. Denver, Colorado is warmer than Miami, Florida all week this week. So,
well, I'm just hoping that we're low to mid 60s today. I'm hoping it holds out through tomorrow. It's first scrimmage for Cole and the Hilliard Bradley Jaguars JVB team. So, need to keep that weather warm so Daddy don't get cold.
Indeed. We'll be back next week. Until then, have a wonderful weekend.